S-foils in attack position and switch your deflectors on. It is time for Red 5 standing by. With you this week are your two hosts as always. I am Jedi Master Ecom Nuos, and with me as always is my friend and yours, Jedi Master Johnny D.
Hello, hey, Master Nuos, and hello everybody. Thanks again for joining.
Yes, you are back with us again. This is the podcast where we talk about, is Israel committing genocide? Is Donald Trump senile? Is a fetus... No, wait, sorry, wrong podcast. We are here to talk about Star Wars The Acolyte,
no.
other things, Star Wars and pop culture, so that we don't need to think about any of that stuff. Yes, we got lots to talk about. We had the third episode of The Acolyte this week, as well as some upcoming news about Marvel movies and some other Star Wars information. We will begin with breaking down and discussing and theorizing about the third episode of The Acolyte, and then move into some news and deep tea with Johnny D. That's what we got to look forward to this week, folks.
Yes, so get ready for another exciting episode of Red 5 Standing By. All right, Mr. Nuos. Well, yes, I mean, the Israel stuff, definitely don't feel like talking about that, but it seems like the Star Wars community is, definitely can be as relentless with their sides and battles, and this week definitely seems to have a bit of that. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that, in relation to the most recent episode of The Acolyte. But Nuos, you get us started here on this episode.
All right. Well, last time we talked about the first two episodes of Acolyte, so this week we're talking about the newest episode. This week's episode was titled Destiny, and I do want to make a point about the title when we get into this here in a little bit. It was directed by Kogonada, and this week's episode was written by Eileen Shint and Jasmine Flournoy. Not names that I am familiar with, but yeah. I thought they did some good work, and I think there's going to be lots and lots to talk about. Do you have your first impression, Johnny D, before we give our obligatory spoiler warning?
Yeah. So my first take that I'll reveal is, the first half, I definitely was into it. I enjoyed seeing the different kind of cultural framing of the Force, which we'll get into that. So yeah, that part was good. The latter part, the ending part, definitely I thought was weak. That was my impression of the episode. That's my initial thoughts.
Oh, well, that I find that interesting. I was actually kind of the opposite. For me, it started off weak, and as it went along, I found myself getting more and more into it. So that is very, very interesting that we kind of had the opposite of both spectrums with this episode. One thing I wanted to point out, I noticed the first two episodes, they had dual titles. I think one episode was called Lost Found, and the other episode was called, what was the second episode called? It was called, I have it here, Revenge Justice. So right away, the first thing I noticed was that this episode only had one title, but I think that was a choice and it was relevant. I think the first two episodes, the storytelling was done by two perspectives, the perspective of both twins, and I have seen some speculation this week where people weren't sure whose point of view this story was coming from. To me, I thought it was crystal clear that we were only seeing the events that happened in this episode from the perspective of the good twin. And that is why the title had one word in it rather than two. That was my first clue that we weren't getting the dual storytelling perspectives in this episode. And I think there's a lot that we did not see in this episode, and I am expecting to get a second flashback which will fill in the blanks of what we did not learn this week, and it will be told from the perspective of the dark side twin. That's
Okay.
my big
Yeah,
speculation. I mean,
that's a good guess. That's
go
a
ahead.
good guess. That would explain maybe some of the. I mean, I felt like, as giving a foreshadowing of the weaker part. Yeah, I felt like it was rushed at the end, and I'm going, well, is there more that we didn't need, that we hadn't seen yet? So it's interesting how you bring up that point, because that's sort of what I thought, just to to give them a bit of the benefit of the doubt of some of the weaknesses that I felt for that latter part. I wasn't thinking about the twin though. That's cool that you brought that up. I was thinking that the dark shadowy Sith like figure that we still don't know who is. I thought maybe we would say they'd be involved in that situation that caused all the mayhem at the end. Which, yeah, maybe we see that from the whatever the May twin perspective, right? So yeah, so definitely I was thinking something not completely similar to along those lines, but definitely I had room in my brain for that. So that's cool that you brought that up. Yeah, I could see that. Mate, that they, I mean, that'd be cool if they did that. I think that'd be interesting.
Right? Yeah. Well, we're going to touch on a lot of that. So, okay, let's just get it out of the way. Spoiler warning. Spoiler warning.
Red
Spoiler
by,
warning.
standing by, spoiler alerts.
If you have not seen the third episode, come back after you have, so that we can help work you through it as Johnny D and I work through it with ourselves together. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of things that you said there. I mean, I don't even know where to start to unpack all of this. Again, I'm not really interested in doing a scene by scene breakdown. So let's just start with some generalizations, and from there we'll see if the conversation just kind of takes us into specific parts of the episode. But what was I'm going to ask you, what was your take on this coven of witches? They say in the episode that they are persecuted, that they have been hunted down. They are hiding on this planet. They are not native to this planet. This is somewhere where they have settled, where they try and do whatever it is that they're doing that they feel they're being persecuted for. We're going to get into one of the things. I mean, the big reveal in the episode, I would say, would be that the twins are, if we take the witches at their word, they were immaculate conception. Like Anakin Skywalker, they did not have a father. However, I got the impression in this episode that it wasn't just the Force decided to create a living being that was powerful with it. I mean, they basically said that no, Mother Anastasia created these two twins. It was a choice.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So there's, yeah, definitely have thoughts on that trail there of what you just said. So I
okay,
can
well,
start, or you can wrap up, and I can start with your first
the big thing I'm going to
items.
say, to me, I'm fairly certain that these witches, they're dark side users. I mean, based on what was presented as
From
my
a
big
certain point of
speculation.
view.
Well, no. Because things. I just rewatched the episode as well, and I noticed something else that I didn't notice the first time. I am going to get into this, but I'm just going to put my whole thing out there. What I think is happening. I think whoever the Sith Lord is, that is behind what the story of what this show was telling. Because again, we have to remember, this show is supposed to be explaining how the Sith were able to become so powerful that by the time the Phantom Menace comes, the Jedi are not as in touch with the Force. The dark side clouds everything. Yoda even himself says he can't really see in the future anymore. The dark side clouds everything. So this was trying to show this. The series, the premise was to show us how this happened. And so far, we haven't even heard the word Sith in the 3 episodes of the show. But there are trails there, and I think this coven is being assisted by whoever the Sith Lord is at this point in time. One thing the thing that I noticed on my rewatch is at the 11:52 mark of the episode, it was shortly after we were introduced to this coven of witches that live on this planet, and the 2 twins that we are following in the show. This is a flashback in case I've neglected to mention that earlier. I think it's about 10, 15 years before the events of the first 2 episodes. It's established that there's this coven of witches. They call themselves witches. Witches doesn't necessarily mean you have to be evil. Uh, they use the Force, but they do not call it the Force. They acknowledge that others in the galaxy call it the Force, but they call it the thread. For some reason I'm not clear on, they say the Jedi use the Force, and they don't believe that you're supposed to be doing that. But as I was saying, at the 11:52 mark, after that opening scene, there's an establishing shot of the temple from the outside, and then there's another shot that I didn't even notice the first time I watched it before we get into like the next actual scene. So after the establishing shot of the structure and the skyline, there's another shot of a hole in the ground with 10 of these witches standing around this hole praying and waving their arms and doing whatever. There's no dialogue, there's no audio, and it's a quick 2-3 seconds. Do you know what I'm talking about,
Is,
Johnny
is that
D?
is that when they first show the planet?
It's after the planet. It's after the scene which introduces the two girls, and they want their I have it written down.
So it's later on. It's not a part of the first establishing shot.
No, it's like I said, it's at the 11:52 time mark of the episode. If anyone wants to know exactly what the hell I'm talking about because they don't recall, 11:52 of the episode, after you have the scene which introduces the twins as children and Mother Anicia and Mother Kirill. Mother Kirill were the two main witches characters. Mother Anicia, it's inferred that Mother Anicia created the twins and that Mother Kirill carried them to term and gave birth. Mother Kirill is the Zabrak. Zabrak is the same race as Darth Maul. They're the ones with the patterns on their face, and they have the horns coming out of their heads. And also of note, because the Zabrak, Darth Maul, he actually comes from the planet Dathomir, which is the same planet that the Night Witches are from in the Star Wars universe. But we learned in Ahsoka that the Night Witches were not native to Dathomir. They come from that other galaxy that is called the Peridia Galaxy, because it's the only planet we've seen in that galaxy. That is where they originate from, and they migrated to the Star Wars galaxy thousands of years ago and settled on Dathomir. If you know your Star Wars continuity, you actually know that the Night Witches offered Darth Maul, because they knew that he was strong in the Force. They offered him to Palpatine or Sidious rather, same person, as kind of an offering to, like, here, we'll give you this strong Force user to be your apprentice. Just leave us alone and let us do our own thing here. We're not really concerned with what's happening in the rest of the galaxy. So the Zabrak are the natives to Dathomir. At some point, a couple of thousand years ago, the Night Witches came from the Peridia Galaxy, settled on Dathomir. I'm assuming that because they were powerful in the Force, the magic that they use is them actually tapping into the Force. I'm sure they subjugated the Zabrak race and all of that. So help me, Johnny D. I lost my train of thought because I keep having to explain things. But I forget what my original point was.
All right. Well,
okay, no, I got it. Okay, so yeah, you had that opening scene, and then you introduce the two twins. They ask for their spice cream, which, by the way, I have to mention, spice in the Star Wars universe is a drug. So the fact that
they call it spice cream? Did I hear that correctly?
Spice cream.
What?
Yes, spice cream.
The little girls are asking for spice cream?
The little girls are asking for the spice cream, and Mother Kirill says, no, you cannot have none. And Mother Anicia is, let the girls have their spice cream, blah, blah, blah. So as far as I'm aware, they're drugging these kids.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other topic there, the spice cream section. Wow, okay, right? So let's we better table that one. Let's talk about spice cream a little later on in the episode, because that opens up a whole can of worms.
So yes. So after that opening scene, that's when you get the establishing shot of the skyline, the structure of the temple or castle that they live in, whatever you want. But before it goes into the next scene, you get another 3-second insert shot of a hole, a deep, dark-looking cave with all the witches surrounding this, and they're praying and kneeling, and a couple of them are waving their hands. Like I said, it's a 3-second scene. It's hard to figure out exactly what's going on with no dialogue, but it's there for a reason. And to me, when I saw it, it's the Dark Side cave that was on Act 2. It's the same thing that happened in Episode 8. when Ray fell inside of it, and then she went swimming, and then she had that
Oh yeah,
vision
yeah.
where she saw
So
multiple. So
yeah.
that right there is bang. That's more evidence that yes, these dark or
Well, it's
these
interesting how
witches
you
on this.
bring up the Dark Side Cave thing because I actually thought about the Dark Side Cave in the first episode because I thought just like the concept of the Dark Side Cave, where like yeah, there's basically regions in whatever caves and wherever else that are like just geographical locations that have dark side forces around it and crazy stuff happens in them, right? And I thought that
Yes,
that might have been something that was going on when she saw May, the vision of May when she crash landed on that planet. I was like, oh, is she in some sort of dark side type cave like on Dagobah? So
right.
so it reminded me of that phenomenon. How I don't think I can't remember when I mean maybe in the cartoons they showed it, but I can't remember in the actual movies that they showed another dark side location. Like I guess with the sequels, you say Ray probably was in one. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
In episode 8.
so yeah, so these witches maybe they found one and they're like, yeah, this instead of like being wary of it, like Yoda probably was, they actually embrace it, right?
Well, actually, Yoda was not wary of it, and that is exactly why he chose Dagobah as his place to go, because he knew the dark side was strong there, and it would help mask his presence in the Force, so that
Yeah, yeah.
the
Yoda's so
Empire
high up
would.
that he's able to kind of use both sides to his advantage. In yeah,
Because you mentioned it, I'll bring it up because you're right. That actual cave that does show up in the 6th season of the Clone Wars cartoon. Before the exile in the Empire rises to power, Yoda travels to Dagobah and he goes in that dark side cave, and that is where he first communes with Ghost Qui-Gon Jinn. And that is where Yoda learns the ability to become a Force ghost, and then goes back to the temple and blah blah everything else that happens in episode 3, and episode 3 happens. But yes, it was established in the Clone Wars that Yoda goes to Dagobah for the first time, and like I said, that is where he finally talks, because the Dagobah, there's a word for it. Like it's strong in the Force in general, but at some point in the past, something bad happened with the dark side users there, and it corrupted it. The same thing happened on Korriban. The same thing happened even on Coruscant. The Jedi Temple is actually built upon the ruins of an old Sith temple.
Sorry, when did they say that about the? I know you mentioned that before. When is that stated in the whatever chronology
Uh,
canon?
I did not research that because I talked about it off the top of my head.
Oh, you
So
just
I
remember seeing
will.
that in the.
I
That's all
know
good.
it's there,
That's all
but
good.
I
That's all
can't
good.
give you a
Okay, so
specific
I
source.
want us to go back to your comment, and then I'll start bringing in my thoughts here because you talked about how you see them as, I guess, dark side aligned something or others. Like the witches. What are they called? What is their name? They're witches. What kind of witches? Do they have a name? Anyway, the witches in Acolyte. So my thought is, I was like, when I saw them, I was like, okay, well, this is I'm good with this because like I've seen this before, and we've talked about this before. It's like people are going to have different framings around the force or whatever you want to call it, this power that exists in this universe. Different people can have different framings of it. They're going to use different words, just like how people construct religions around similar kind of thoughts and phenomena and all that stuff in our planet, right? So that's why it's like they have this framing. I'm good with that, right? Like and yeah, I mean the Force is just, and all the Jedi lore. It's just one way that they constructed stuff, and so the witches, they do their construct same as like the old witches from Maul's planet kind of constructed their own framework around this powerful thing, which is the Force that we call is what we call it. The same thing how the Rakatan, the ancient beings that were in KOTOR and
Yep.
all that, they basically have their own framings around it and their own usages of the of channeling the Force and creating crazy stuff, right? So it's all gonna be different stuff. Again, okay, so there's that. Now, to finish up my thread here is that yes, them being dark side, I don't mean that makes them evil. I think that's they're more, they could be possibly neutral, more gray, where they're able to kind of channel both stuff. And this is going to go to the Ahsoka series where you have the guy, what was the guy's name who was unfortunately the guy who
Balin.
passed away, Balin, where he's like kind of like seems to be threading this kind of neutral path. And we saw it with me as my character when we were playing. For those who, I recommend go check out our KOTOR 2 prequel work that we did, where there's definitely some neutral paths I was taking. But yes, in
Yep.
canon, in the Acolyte, they have this kind of the Ahsoka series. They have this neutral path. So I don't, I think they might be these witches are basically they're just doing a different type of framing of the Jedi, and I think it's interesting, right? So I don't, yeah, and maybe it's okay to channel dark side, light side. There's no, it's just a power, right? And you don't need to be
Yes.
so worried about it. You can kind of embrace it. That's I'm guessing my thoughts and their interpretations of it. But of course, the Jedi who are really paranoid about the Sith, which would be totally justified because there were so many wars that we've seen in the Old Republic that like basically the Sith are like a no-go zone for them, and they're definitely really making sure that it doesn't seep in any of that dark side stuff. So I think that's kind of the conflict here that we have with these witches who are kind of persecuted, outsiders, and the Jedi who are like trying to contain them, right? Which is what happens in this episode.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's always been a bone of contention for me how some people out there assume just because you're using the dark side of the Force that you're a Sith. That is not the case at all. Just as
That's just a
because you're
construct,
using the
right?
exactly just because
Or
you're using
that
the
was a
light
type of
side of the
alien
Force.
that used it, and so they were called the Sith, and so that's just
Exactly.
the name
Both the
stuck.
Jedi and the Sith, it's more of a philosophy, a religion. And I think it is entirely possible that you can use the Force without devoting yourself to one side or the other. The problem is that the dark side is powerful, and the more you use it, the more likely you are to be corrupted to it and fall into the trappings of the
Yeah, it
dark
can
side.
really
And
mess you up. It can really mess you up. Like it's that we've seen, right? Like it's like a drug.
abs
It's like someone becomes a heroin addict, right? It's just their brain
yeah,
chemistry just alters to the point they're not really that person anymore, right? That's
but
the danger of it.
I think the very wise, powerful Jedi, they can use it and not. Heck, even Luke Skywalker uses the dark side of the Force in the Return of the Jedi. The first time we see Luke Skywalker in the Return of the Jedi, he's using the dark side of the Force, right?
Like what when he does like the throat stuff on
Yeah,
on the pig guys. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, he's
Like
definitely
that. That
he's
is
definitely
not
flirting with
something
it.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I
Right.
think I think he realizes at the end that he's got to tone it down, right? Because
Well,
he starts to
that's his.
he starts to realize
That's
he's
it.
getting pretty close when he's with the Emperor, right?
That's Luke Skywalker's entire character arc in Return of the Jedi in a lot of ways. And Lucas even like subtly makes you think that because the entire movie, Luke Skywalker is wearing black, right?
Oh yeah,
He's
yeah.
wearing
They're not
the
subtle
color of
about
the.
it at all. Yeah.
But
I mean,
have you ever?
I think if you're really high up, you really got to be careful. I think Yoda knows he's got to be super careful with what he does with it. That's for
But
sure.
have you ever noticed Johnny D at the end of Return of the Jedi when he throws down his lightsaber and he allows whatever to happen and he believes in the Force, right? And they defeat the Emperor and he saves Darth Vader and turns it back in the end. Do you ever notice that the flap on his outfit that he's worn the entire movie, there's a flap much like Captain Kirk's where it falls down and it shows the white underneath. And
Yeah,
even
yeah,
using the costuming,
yeah,
Lucas
yeah.
was
I remember. I
telling the
remember.
audience,
I remember the
yeah,
visual, and yeah, I didn't think about how that was intentional.
that was there's nothing in Lucas's Star Wars that is not intentional. And I choose to believe that the same thing can be said in most of Disney Star Wars. But anyways, let's get back to the Acolyte. Yeah, and so I think they're using the dark side of the Force for sure, but I wouldn't say they're devoted to it. I'm not really. I mean, we don't really know enough to know exactly what it is they're doing. I mean, it's obvious that they're not these witches are not recruiting new members. They're not getting new converts to their side. I don't know if that is why they decided to create the two characters that this show is. I mean, that is still a
Well,
little
okay,
bit
yeah,
of a mystery.
that's an interesting topic. Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that topic about them creating the twins, right? But I think, yeah,
Yes.
I think about like what their the end game of their religion is. I'm not sure. My thought is that it seems like it's probably been around for like over 1,000 years, if not longer, and so it's been passed
Yes.
down.
Yes.
So it's like, yeah, like why does I mean because witchcraft, like people do practice witchcraft in our world, right? And it's all about like creating spells and
Yeah.
intent and trying to do something, right? So, um, yeah, you got to go. What is the why? Why do they just use the power because they have it? I mean, I know one probably motivation for witchcraft over the history of humanity is that as a healing, that's a benefit, right? Like it, like a healing witch would. You obviously want to, you know, that's something that's gonna be a benefit, right? If you can figure out how to do that, right?
Okay.
Um, so I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, so that would make sense in the Star Wars universe to have it. They've obviously figured out the telekinetics part of it. So
Yeah.
self defense probably that's where it's useful, right?
And
Because I mean,
that's the light side of the
so
force
yeah,
there.
so I mean, they know that this power exists. They figured out how to use it. I don't know how they get new members and how they figure out who can use it. And I'm almost wondering, is there like is it like there's a lot of gatekeeping going on with the Jedi's because with the Jedi concept, it's like you think it's like there's it's very very rare for someone to be able to have force powers. But is that just a bias? Is that actually the reality, right? Is it like
Right.
that they're dismissive of people that maybe actually could be force users, but they just are closed minded, so they can never tap into it? While this coven of witches, uh, maybe, or maybe it's just as rare as well, and that's that. Maybe they just people just seek them out who just think they have force powers, and for some reason they don't
Well,
go
well,
to the Jedi. I don't know. I don't know, right?
well, we're overlooking the fact here that it's already been established that everybody in the Star Wars galaxy has the Force, and everybody has the potential to use the Force. That's what the midichlorians are. The higher your midichlorian account, the higher your ability to
So
tap
there's different
into
levels.
the
There's different
Force.
levels. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So for some reason the
Right?
Jedi only pick a very rare type of people, I guess, who have a certain midichlorian level. Is that what they really care about?
It's all about the high midichlorian count. Even in this episode, when the Jedi do show up, which we're going to get there, ladies and gentlemen, when the Jedi do show up, they make the point of Master Saul taking a blood sample, right? And how do you test your midichlorians? You take a blood sample because
Yeah,
she even says, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Don't worry, this won't hurt."
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And there's
So
no
they're doing the standard test, but it's not the BLN though.
exact.
It's not the BLN though. You think that that's all that you need, but no, you still need to do the what do you see, a ship or a mountain kind of test, right? They still do
Well,
that test too. It's just so they need to
because
do multiple
they
tests.
want to know how likely when you're tapping into the force, how much of what you're tapping into is the light side and how much is the dark side, because
Oh,
they
okay,
don't.
yeah, yeah, okay, I get that.
Right.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, so that's really what they're screening for. They're screening for people who are going to be like too crazy, right?
Yes, people that have their own tendency to lean more towards the dark side, they're not going. It's
They
the
just say,
also the
"Oh,
same.
you're not allowed to be a Jedi," and they probably just like kind
Yes.
of hint it's because you don't have enough Jedi power, but that's not the reality. That could be like a Jedi kind of white lie, right?
100%. And it's the
Yeah,
same
I get
reason
it.
why the Jedi refuse to train people that are strong in the force but of older than a certain age, because by that point, when you're been alive for 10 years old, you have too many emotional attachments, and they are afraid that because you love your parents or you love your brother or sister, that you're more likely to have happen what happened to Anakin, right? I mean, that's exactly what happened to Anakin. They didn't want to train him because they were afraid he was too old, because he still loved his mom, and all of that stuff, right? But because Qui-Gon died, they trained him anyway. Uh, and I mean, yeah, his full turn to the dark side was after Padme died, but his first that we're aware of, the first time he fall uses the dark side himself, was when he went back to Tatooine and his mother died, and he goes and he kills all the Tusken Raiders, and he says that I killed them all, even the children, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Well,
that's
yeah,
why.
they knew there was risk, and they're right. You know,
Yeah,
they're right
yeah,
that it was a
they are
risky
right.
venture because it didn't end up so
So
well for them.
like the one part when they're doing the training and they're showing the two kids how, right, and the mother Anastasia has the other witch, and like she tries to do the force push, but she's not strong enough because then there's one. So she's like, but now see the power of two. And then so she has two of the witches attack her with the force push while she tries to resist. And now you can see that she's struggling. And in that scene, she says the line of dialogue is the Jedi believe that you wield the force, she said, or the threat as they call it. And she says that is not true. So to get back to the point of like, what is their goal? Like, what are they doing? Do they think that that they're doing the will of the Force? Because they diametrically oppose to how the Jedi use the Force themselves. and they don't like the impression I got was how the Jedi you need to become a Jedi and follow the rules, or you shouldn't use the Force. And like we said, it's because they're afraid that using the Force is going to lead to the dark side and all of that. So yeah, so I don't know, all speculation. Just trying to bring up as much information as I can because I don't have the answers. But yeah, anything else on that topic?
Well, I mean, I'll go with the like the creation of the twins, right? So, yeah, like it's like Anakin is, I mean, I guess potentially was what immaculate conception. I know that the Emperor in the prequels talks about how people. I think he talks about how you can like save life, but he's talking about creating life. I forget. He talks about all these like when they're at that cool show and they're watching all those cool
They are at
trippy
the
light shows.
opera.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and he talks
have
about
I ever told you the story of Darth Plagueis the
yeah, yeah.
Wise?
So that part is he talking about how like I always thought he was alluding to that maybe he was maybe behind the conception of Anakin, right?
Okay,
Is it
okay, and I got something to add to that for you. There was a comic book that was put out about 5 years ago. It was the Darth Vader. I don't remember the issue number, but it was written by Charles Soule. Okay, now he wrote this Darth Vader comic for 5 years, and he is one of the main architects of the High Republic era. He's one of the lead writers in the story group that is responsible for this the whole entire high. So he's not just some hired dude. Like he's kind of running this. He's the Dave Filoni or the George Lucas of this High Republic era, and he did a Darth Vader comic book about 5 years ago, where Vader was having a vision, and in this vision, he saw Palpatine using the Force to create him in his mother's. There's a little comic panel of Shmi there with like the specter of Darth Sidious around her and manipulating the Force around her stomach. So the comic book is implying, and this goes to the conversation that you're talking about in episode 2 or episode 3 at the opera, where Vader is afraid that Darth Sidious is the one who used the Force to create him. Now, this writer, Charles Soule, did go on to social media afterwards to say this isn't necessarily what happened. What I portrayed in this issue, I am communicating to you, this is what Darth Vader is afraid of. Not that he was created by the Force to be the chosen one, that it was a manipulation by Darth Sidious that he was created.
This is just his paranoia, so it's not canon. It's not established.
So it's not canon. It could be true, but he wanted to make the point. Like, I'm not saying that Darth Sidious created Anakin. I am saying that Anakin is afraid this is what happened.
So it's not established. There's potential, right? There's potential.
Yeah. So like I said, I think whoever the Sith Lord is, he's working with these witches. He's the one that got them on this planet, got them around this, because it's obviously a dark side nexus, because they had that shot of the cave.
Where are you bringing it? You're bringing in the witches now? Sorry, how are you doing that?
I'm bringing in the witches. I'm tying it in the Acolyte and the twins. So I think this Sith Lord at this time is trying to do what Darth Sidious was trying to do, what his master Darth Plagueis was trying to do, and what his master before him, Darth Tenenbaum, was trying to do.
So you're bringing in a theory and speculation there. Got it. So before we get deeper into the theory and speculation, I'll just say what we know. What we know is that they did tap into something. These witches tapped into something.
These twins, the two characters of the show, one that is powerful in the light side and one is powerful in the dark side. If we take these witches for their word, were created using the Force, because
they figured it out.
It's stated in the episode that there was no father, and so I think the Sith Lord of this time, who is the Sith, have been trying to do this for maybe the 1,000 of years. This is like the precursor to Anakin.
If you establish that theory, we'll get to the theory in a bit, just a bit more. But I think what it is that they obviously tapped into something. I think either they were helped or they did it independently. My initial thought, I was going with I'll just go with what I know, is that they independently did it because they're obviously able to figure out. I mean, they're able to do that crazy Force or thread power where they took over the one Jedi, which is pretty crazy. So they obviously, like I say, they're able to figure all this stuff out, and like this Plagueis guy, whatever he knew, these witches are obviously figuring stuff out too, or they're being shown the same thing by the same people. Anyway, so they obviously figured out how to do it. It shows that you can do it. Before we get into your theory, my question is why. I'm not really sure why yet. Is it just because they just wanted to have kids, or is there some higher purpose that they're hoping for these twins? I think it shows that we just don't know. There's more to be known about these witches. That's what I know. So that's my thoughts.
100% agree.
And then, but yeah, and then to your theory that yes, there could be this involvement of this mysterious Sith character that we still need to find out who they are, and it could be tied to the entire Star Wars prequel stuff. We'll have to see.
Yes, because as you said, I don't think that's what the witches are trying to do. I don't think the witches are worried about creating life out of nothing and all of that. I think, like that's stated in the episode, that they're hunted, they're persecuted. They are just trying to keep their beliefs and their society alive and moving forward, because we don't see any males. There's no males on this planet, and there's no children aside from the two twins that are on there. And they even make the point of the episode later on where the one, well, I won't get into that. So that's what I don't think the witches are tied into like the grand scope of using the Force and all of that. I think that is where the Sith Lord comes in, and he is using these witches as a means for his goals. And I don't think they are even aware of what it is he's trying to do. They're trying to survive, and he's using that for his benefit. So he's like, yeah, I can help you survive, and I can help you do this too. So he's getting something out of it, and they're getting something out of it, and they're not necessarily aligned with each other. They both have their own goals. It's just, but it's the Sith, and the Sith manipulate everything in Star Wars. It's always been that way.
Yeah, that's your theory, because we haven't seen anything that.
That's my theory. Because the bottom line for me, there has to be a reason they're showing this, right? So it has to be relevant. It has to be tied into what the goal of this entire story
showing what,
is.
The witches?
No, the Sith, right? There's no reason for them if this show is supposed to be showing us how the Sith rose to power in the 1,000 years and how they managed to take control of everything. The only point of giving us this story about these witches and that we're even talking about is because it's the Sith Lord is behind it. It has to.
Yeah. But have they mentioned
otherwise it's entirely pointless.
Have they referred to them? Did they refer to him as a Sith?
No, we have still not heard the word Sith on the show. Not
because
yet.
How did they just refer to it as him when they were talking in the apothecary, right? When May was talking to the guy.
Yes.
Right? They just refer to him as him.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes.
So, and they have a lightsaber. We see that, right?
Yes. So okay. So yeah, let's get back into it. So okay. So we've established what's going on this planet, who the twins are, why they exist. The next thing that happens is the Jedi show up, which normally you think, hey, the Jedi, this is good. But the way that they portrayed it in this episode is, the Jedi are groomers, and they're here to take your children away. Right?
Yeah.
Like. They make it look like, well, it's the children's choice, but I mean, Jedi Master Saul, my favorite character on this show so far, I mean, I felt like he was manipulating the girl in ways to saying that, yeah, like he's telling her, oh yeah, there's lots of kids in the Jedi. I think you'd be a great Jedi. Like he's telling her what he wants her to think so that she will agree with him and go. And so the central conflict of this entire episode is the witches they're hiding from the Jedi. They know that they're not supposed to have these children because apparently in the entire Star Wars galaxy, if you have kids and they're strong in the Force, there's a chance the Jedi are going to show up and take your kids away from you. Right?
Yep.
Now, it's an ends justify the means things. When I say someone wants to come and take your children away from you and you're never going to see them, that doesn't sound so good. But when you look at the overall philosophy, the reason they're doing this is because there's the potential that your child could succumb to the power of the dark side and become totally evil.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not really good either.
What do they do with those kids? What do they do with those kids that have super high metachlorians but super tank the dark side test, right?
That's a good question because I know for a fact Obi-Wan Kenobi was deemed not powerful enough in the Force by the Jedi Council, and he actually was not approved to make the transition from youngling to Padawan. But Qui-Gon Jinn saw something in him and took the responsibility of Obi-Wan himself and said, I will train him and I will make him a Jedi. And he became, in my opinion, one of the greatest Jedi Masters of all time. But there was a point that the Jedi Council didn't think Obi-Wan was good enough, and they were not going to allow him to become a Jedi until Qui-Gon stepped up. And so, to your question, what happens to those
quickly
kids?
provide context, like short context about where that reference is from for people.
It's from a novel. It's from a novel that came out after the Phantom Menace. Between
and one
Phantom
quick question
Menace,
was it? Do you think it was established that midichlorian count was low? Is that what it is, or whatever that the power levels was low, and that's why he was not allowed? It wasn't the
I'm going to say with 80% certainty. It's been 20 years, but yes, I think that is the reason why. Is that his midichlorian was
the older and the farther away a medium is from the visual, so novels. I always say then the canon gets weaker and weaker. That's my opinion. So, but anyway, I'll take it for now. And it just is. We're using it to establish the
why.
methods
and I am with you on there,
and the potentials for different people and how the Jedi approaches them, right?
And I am with you on there. However, Disney has made a point of giving evidence that story holds true, because in the Obi-Wan Kenobi television show, they mention that Kenobi has a brother that he hasn't seen since the Jedi took him away, and that directly goes back to that novel where the Jedi were not going to allow Obi-Wan to continue his training until Qui-Gon stepped in. And as that novel was the first time it was ever mentioned that Obi-Wan Kenobi had a brother. So since that was stated in that novel, I choose to believe that is part of the old continuity that Disney has. But like you said, you're not wrong. And unless it's in a movie or a TV show, it can always be changed.
It just gets softer. But I think Disney does seem to have, I think they have like on staff, like canon preservists, I think, at this point now, right? Like they're trying to have some regulators.
They specifically do. His name's Pablo Hidalgo. That his entire job is making sure everything.
Anyway, back to the situation with the Jedi. Yeah, so the Jedi.
So the Jedi show up on this planet.
Oh, I was going to say one comment of interest is that they're definitely going to have the perception that they're going to take your kids, but they did have a disclaimer. They said you're allowed to say no. They did say that. So that's
true.
You're allowed to say no. Like you still have.
You're allowed to say no, but I also felt like Jedi Master Saul. I feel like Jedi Master Saul was doing everything he could to manipulate that girl into saying yes and not say, like, you can say no, but I'm going to tell you all the reasons that you shouldn't say no.
You could definitely have a case if you took the Jedi to old Republic court, right?
Right.
You definitely would have.
Yes.
You got to get the whatever the Lionel Hutz or the Better Call Saul of the Old Republic to be on your side to help you argue against the Jedi. That would be a good little funny little side movie or TV show. You have like a Star Wars legal drama because hey, legal dramas are exciting. But it was
Jedi Master Council legal.
Yeah, you thought you did like politics in the Phantom Menace, but boy, if you do it with some zesty courtroom antics like Boston Legal, we're going to show you that politics is fun. Or at least judicial politics. Indeed.
Yeah,
someday.
So, so the witches are aware that they're not supposed to have these strong in the Force children, and when they learn that the Jedi are at their planet, they're like, hey, we need to hide the kids, because they know exactly why the Jedi are there. Apparently there's no why are they here or anything. Like, no, as soon as they hear the Jedi are there, they're like, we need to hide the kids. So to me it's implied, and I've never even considered this before, that so what a couple 100 years ago throughout the galaxy, like, it's basically law if your children are strong in the Force that you have to turn them over to the Jedi if they want them. No, it's not,
because they said that you're allowed to say no. But it could be there's a perception that doesn't exist, or that's just bullshit. That they're gonna one way or another take your kids away from you. But they did say you're allowed to say no. They did say that. It was Carrie-Anne Moss explicitly said that.
What would have happened though if the kids didn't reveal themselves? Because the Jedi are there, they're like, so where are the kids? And they're like, what kids? We don't know what you're talking about. And then the one child decides to step forward and reveal herself. So what would have happened if that hadn't happened? Because it was established that The Jedi in the opening scene of the episode, it's the two girls. They're in the forest. They're standing in front of this tree. Which, by the way, that tree in the second episode, the poison that the one twin used to kill Jedi Master Torben when she gave him the choice, like you can kill yourself and I'll forgive you and all of that. Anyway, she had that poison made. The poison was made from one of the leaves of that tree because they even had the line of dialogue in the tree. Don't eat it and you'll be fine. So yeah, they're out there, they're playing in the field and everything, and Jedi Master Saul is hiding behind a tree watching them. So the Jedi have already been on this planet. They know the kids are there, and when they finally decide 15 minutes into the episode to reveal themselves to the witches and like we're here to like check out your kids and test them for their possibility of becoming a Jedi. Where are they? And they're like, what children? We don't have any children here. So they know why they're there, and they don't want. They're going to refuse it. And if that little girl hadn't have like said, "Hey, yeah, I'm here," what would have happened? Would they've like pulled out their light? Like, would there
I
have
don't
been
know.
conflict?
Yeah, yeah. The Jedi in some ways are a shifty bunch, right? They're kind of like they're sneaking around, they're spying, and they have, and yeah, I mean, how far are they going to go? Like, and yeah, they're saying all this stuff, and how much is real, and how often do they bend the rules? Like the fact that you're allowed to say no. Are you? You can say no, but then the Jedi will find some other way to manipulate the situation, or do they get aggressive? I don't know. Yeah, you have this thing that's been lasting for thousands of years. You could probably have some variance in how how ethical some of the Jedi groups are compared to others, right? And I'm guessing there's going to be some skeletons in the Jedi closets of how they went about things. So you don't know. You don't know how far they're going to go. It all depends on, I guess, the leader, like that'd be Carrie Ann Moss's character,
Yeah.
what their ethical stances or their orders, and what orders are they given by their superiors, right? So we don't know, but definitely there's enough that they do, and that their reputation that's around this galaxy, that's obviously been in peace, more or less, relative to what it was like before. That they're a little sus at times, and some people definitely don't trust them, the Jedi, right? Like anybody, like how you just sometimes you can't trust your local police force or anything like that, right?
Hey,
Yeah.
100%.
So and yeah, so yeah, there's definitely some paranoia, and maybe that's rightfully so for these Jedi.
Well,
So I don't know what they would have done, but anyway, they it didn't go down well. Whatever happened in the end, that's
no.
for sure.
No. Yeah, and we'll get there. So yeah, so they ask for the child. The child reveals herself. Blah 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 blah. Then no fight happens, but there's a little confrontation. There's a point where the lead witch from the coven, Mother Anicia, she inserts some sort of mind control. I don't know if it was possession or mind control or what exactly was happening there, but the one Jedi that we saw
Torben.
kill Jedi Master Torben, well done. That he later killed himself in the second episode. He is the one that gets
So that
possessed.
shows some, because we were. I mean, I was a little shocked that he killed himself, and going, and why did he do this 10 years of silence? And I was like, well, it must have been a really traumatic experience. But in the end, it was like, I mean, I guess it was traumatic what happened, but it wasn't like he was responsible for what happened. But I'm wondering if it was more that possession really screwed up his head, right? Where that was like that trauma of, because he looked pretty screwed up, right? Like it was like, ooh,
Yes.
that was a definitely a freaky cool scene. And then you go, yeah, like did that was the impact to him that he had to meditate and have a vow of silence for 10 years because he was completely messed up in his brain? It was like a really bad, super intense 1 minute acid trip that just screwed up his head forever. That's
Well,
disturbing, man. That's disturbing.
there's definitely a battle that happens because when that scene happens and he gets possessed and he falls to his knees and his eyes turn black, he's
Yeah.
still just a normal looking dude. But when we see him 10 years later in the future and he's older, he's like missing an eye. He's got scar all over the side of his face. So that definitely implies that there's a battle that happens there that we did not see in this episode.
Yeah. Okay. We
Um,
didn't see him with scars at the end of the episode, right? Or did we?
okay.
As a young Jedi.
Okay. Let's try and get through this here real quick. Okay, so we talked about all of that. So they confront with the two. Then the witches agree to allow the Jedi test the children. So it switches to like the next day. Basically, the one twin wants to go with the Jedi. The other twin does not want to go with the Jedi. She wants to stay with the witches, and she's very, very mad that her sister wants to go with the Jedi. And the exact line of dialogue is, "If you go with them, I will kill you." So she really doesn't want her sister to go, and she intentionally starts a fire. And now this is where we get into where the perspective thing where I was talking about earlier, where I feel like we're going to see the events of this episode. We're going to see another episode that's a flashback, and it's going to be the alternate viewpoints that we didn't see, because she starts a fire and she closes the door, and like the next thing that happens is like everything's on fire. All of a sudden Jedi Master Saul is at the door, and he's like, "You need to come with me." So they're trying to escape. We see the witches dead everywhere. We see Mother Anissa is dead. And there's the quick scene with the two sisters where it appears that the one falls to her death. So that's why Saul and the twin character said they were so sure that her sister had died when it was clear that she had not. So yeah, so I can see why, if you weren't thinking that we were going to get these events from another perspective, how you could be a little disappointed in the episode, because there's a lot that happens off screen with no explanation. But I do think we are going to get there eventually.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that's what it was. It was just like, um, they're in this big giant stone structure. She lights a book on fire, and for some reason that just kills everybody. I was like, okay, how did that happen? I heard everybody scream though, so they all scream off scene. So I'm like, did something happen? Was there an explosion? Like, I don't know, but all I know is that lights book on fire, giant stone structure, people die in it. And I was like, I don't understand how that happened. It was very quick. And I was like,
yeah.
okay, well, they got the checkbox, traumatic experience done. Let's see what the next plot point is. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll just fine. I'll let you just get the checkbox and move on. But if they do have the secondary viewpoint that you're thinking might happen, yeah, then that'll improve my outlook on this episode. That's for
Okay.
sure.
And I'll give you the evidence. There was another trailer for the rest of the Acolyte that came out afterwards, and I'm going to tie this in to how we got here in the first place with your previous question when I was like, "Okay, let me finish this." When after this happens, and then the main character wakes up on the ship with the Jedi, and Jedi Master Saul is there, and he's like, "There was an explosion. Everybody died. You're going to come with us to Coruscant." Uh, you don't get close-ups, but you do see the other characters in the background. You see Tanaka, you see the Carrie-Anne Moss character, I forget what her name, Indara, Jedi Master Indara. You see Jedi Master Torben. And in the very quick shot of him, you do see his face is all scarred up. So all of that battle damage that he had when he committed suicide in the second episode, he has that when he leaves this planet. We just
Okay,
didn't see it
got it.
happen in this episode. And in the trailer for the remaining episodes of the Acolyte, there is one shot of a footage of the Jedi Master Tanaka jumping through the air with his lightsaber lit, and his eyes are completely black, just like Torben's are when he is possessed. So that's why I think we're going to get the events of this episode in another flashback from the evil twins' perspective, and that the witches are going to possess Jedi Master Tanaka, and he is going to be the one that is responsible for what happened to Jedi Master Torben, and why he has all those scarring and is missing his eye one episode later. I'm not sure exactly why whatever happens that was so bad that he wanted to kill himself. That I don't think that's related to the Tanaka being possessed and attacking him. But that's what I know, and that's why I feel the way I do about what we're still going to see coming up.
Yeah, that's yeah, good call outs. That's definitely changed my perspectives on things. So I'll wait and see. Like I said, I'm still waiting and see, even though it was, in my mind, it just kind of happened pretty fast. I was like, okay, I'm not really sure how that played out. And so, yeah, that either way,
Yeah.
I was like, well, I still want to see what happens next. So I'm still going to, definitely be looking for the next show. But yeah, if they have that extra content, as you suggest, well, yeah, well, that'll be interesting too. So yeah, so definitely things to look forward to. Yeah, definitely didn't, kill the show outright for me. But yeah,
Yeah.
so there you go. Thanks for enlightening me on that perspective there, Newhouse.
And that is one of the issues with these long form storytellings and not giving you every episode at once. It is very hard, and we have to keep reminding ourselves that we cannot judge this episode by episode, because really what we are getting 3 hour long movies that are broken up into 8 little bits. So even though we might not like one episode as much as the next episode, I do think there's more value in waiting until the entire story has been told and presented, and it's a much more fair way to make your judgments, I think. But you are entirely right, and I feel you're justified in how you felt about this episode, because if this is all that we get about what happened on this planet, yeah, there's too much missing, there's too much gaps, and it didn't make sense how lighting a book on fire in the room would cause this entire stone thing to collapse. And yeah, it doesn't make sense as is, but like I said,
Yeah.
it ain't done yet.
No, it ain't
right?
done yet. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what else anything else coming up? I mean, we've kind of been all over the place because things just keep flying into my mind as we talk.
Well,
But I mean,
I think we got through the episode. So yeah,
yeah.
that's all I had to say about it. And so unless
You
you have
want to
any
go back
closing
to
comments,
the spice cream?
oh yeah, spice
The
cream. Yeah.
fact
So
that these
spice
witches
cream.
are drugging their children?
Well, yeah, I mean, is spice just? I mean, if you think about it, like maybe spice is just like design. It's like sugar, right? So in very small quantities, it'd say okay, but I guess it'd be like sugar is just sugar. But let's say that sugar, if you made it into massively concentrated amounts, it would
Right,
be
it's
like
not
an
just sugar,
intense
because
drug.
why
That could
would
like,
Han Solo be smuggling
that's what I'm
sugar
saying. So
in those compartments
let's
in the
say
Millennium Falcon?
let's say in our world that sugar, if you like, sugar is delicious and great in ice cream and everything else. But let's say if there was a way you could make sugar into this concentrated form that just gives you the best like high, and it's like heroin and acid combined. It's amazing and awesome, super addictive. Let's say that's what happens. That would be what spice would be, right? And it would be like super like it would be it'd be illegal, right? Because it would be like, or that's probably what happened. I mean, now the thing is that would you make sugar illegal if that was the case? I don't know. Or is it like you're allowed to have a certain type of sugar for spice cream? Or maybe these witches just that maybe they just think it's a-okay just to give your kids little like pick me ups with this super crazy drug if you just give them the small amounts, because there are witches and they are kind of outsiders, right? So
Right? Yeah.
yeah, but I did not catch
Yeah.
the line, so I'm glad you showed me that there's the line about spice cream. Is
Yeah.
that the first time that they've ever mentioned spice cream?
I'm not sure. There's the one, if you remember, there's the one episode of The Mandalorian which didn't feature the Mandalorian. The entire episode took place on Coruscant, and it was the doctor that was trying to harvest Grogu's blood for the cloning. There's the one scene where him and the other character are walking around in Coruscant where they see the peak of the mountain and all of that, and they're eating what look like popsicles. That may or may not have been spice cream. I cannot confirm nor deny. So I don't know. Maybe it's just the name. Who knows? But yeah.
Anyway,
it just stuck out to me, and I thought it was worth mentioning.
It was.
But
I'll definitely look it up, and I'll just see if it makes other if they show it again in future. I'm curious to see what the fandom thinks, because I know definitely. Okay, so let's talk about the fandom for a bit, because definitely there is. I try not to see too much of what reviews are and what people are saying, but you definitely see in YouTube video feeds of like certain people showing positive sentiment to the episode and negative sentiment to the episode. So there was definitely lots of negative sentiment I was seeing in some of my feeds.
I saw it. I'll give you one thing before I'm going to let you go here, but I'm going to give you one thing before you finish that. I again watched this episode with Jedi Master Miltron. Jedi Master Miltron, when it comes to the internet, his attitude is, what the fuck is the internet? He does not go online. He's not on social media. He is completely oblivious, and he loves this show. He thinks he's really, really enjoying what's going on in this show, and he's invested, and he's all in. So if they're getting him, then that they're doing something right. But go on. Tell me.
I'm just saying fandom, like whoever, the people who are creating content, reviewing this stuff, there's definitely were some people that were angry about the episode, right? I mean, but they're almost angry about everything with Star Wars.
Yeah.
which is, that's fine. They're allowed to be that. But yeah, this was a triggering episode, it seemed. I don't know if you saw that in your surveying of the sentiment of the community.
I saw it, but I don't engage with it. I don't read it. I don't engage with it. I don't need to pollute my mind with the negativity and the hatred when it's not justified. I mean, to me, it feels like all the people that are complaining about Disney Star Wars are the same people that saying George Lucas raped their childhood when the prequels come out, right? They're just not going to be happy whatsoever with anything.
Yeah,
right? Unless it's episodes 4, 5, and 6. I will add that I recently watched the Fat Man and Batman. It's the Kevin Smith podcast where he talks about pop culture, and he confessed. I found this interesting actually because Kevin Smith, in a lot of ways, is responsible for keeping Star Wars alive because he was the only one in pop culture that was talking about it back in the early 90s. Like there was no Star Wars books, there was no Star Wars comics, but Kevin Smith kind of made a name for himself by talking about what happened to all those guys that were building the Death Star in his Clerks movie, right? And how they were just paid laborers who got blown up by the rebels. Like, that's not cool.
Yeah. Chewbacca, what a Wookiee. That was a song I was playing during that scene.
Yeah. He is not watching The Acolyte so far, not because he doesn't think it looks good or anything like that, but he just said for him, he's realized, he's like, I'm older, I don't have a whole lot of free time, and he's like, if it's not conjunction with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, that's just not what he's looking for out of Star Wars. So he ended up talking about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, for a half an hour when they were supposed to be talking about Star Wars Acolyte, because he didn't want to engage in the negativity or anything like that. He's like, I'd rather talk about stuff that I love than talk about stuff that I didn't like. But the whole point being, but unlike him, there's the people that aren't. If it's not about Luke, he's like, it's crap, and I don't want to. That's not my Star Wars. Blah blah blah.
I think we can do a wrap on. We can do a wrap on that on the meta at this point. But my closing thought is, well, I don't need to hear more about how they hated this episode. I do want to see what the community's opinions were on Spice Cream. So I will do that inspection, and I'll report back on whether is Spice Cream accepted by the community, or does the community hate Spice Cream as a concept. I think it's okay. I wouldn't mind learning more about it. I want to see if there's any more references about it. I'm definitely intrigued. And then if I ever go to Disneyland and the Star Wars area and they are serving up Spice Cream, I definitely will give them my $10. They are. If you
go to Galaxy's Edge and you go to the cantina, you can order some Spice Cream.
Oh, well, there you go. It's been established in our reality that this thing exists. Okay, got it. I can even get the ingredients. Right. Okay, there you go. Cool. Spice Cream. All right.
All right. Okay. So moving on. We were running out of time here, and I do have some news that I have to share. Are you ready, Johnny D?
Yeah. Give us the news, Master Newhouse.
All right, well, I'm going to keep it with Star Wars here for a little bit because Dave Filoni was on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast this week and dropping some juicy tidbits about what he's working on and where they are with that. So, yes, Filoni was on the podcast, and he stated that Ahsoka Season 2 is his current focus and his priority. The majority of his work and effort at this point in time is going in towards the second season of Ahsoka. It's broken down. They're still writing it, but he has already talked to the composer, Kevin Kleiner. Kevin Kleiner he's composed all of the animated Star Wars music. He did Clone Wars, he did Bad Batch, he did Rebels, and he was also the composer on Ahsoka. He was also interviewed and said that Filoni has given him a playlist of music that he wants Kleiner to be inspired by while creating, and has done a episode by episode breakdown, and that he's started working on some of the themes already. So to me, if he's working on music and they aren't actually filming and editing, I feel like that's probably character themes is probably what he's working on now. But just the fact that Filoni has given him a playlist and given him a breakdown, I mean, that just gets me excited. Filoni also said that he has already written the opening scene of his movie. And the other big thing that he talked about was he still talks to George Lucas on an almost weekly basis. He tries not to bother George with the little things, but he says when he needs advice about the bigger scope and ideas of the Star Wars universe, he has no problem going to George. And he didn't enlighten with anything, but the one thing he did said about George was that if the fans could hear him now about his ideas and where he thinks what Star Wars is, he said the fans would be even more surprised at how far it diverges and is different than what we would expect. So I just find that interesting because, as if you know, apparently the sequel trilogy, as conceived by George Lucas, was going to get into some very what was it? He was going to get into the microbiology of how the Force worked and the wills and all of that. So that's what we know. So if Filoni is telling us that his ideas are even crazier than that,
so these are just
I wish
ideas he's just spinning up on his own, and he's just
I,
saying if you guys want to
the
know
way
something
I take
interesting,
it,
you can borrow whatever you want, or I'm not, or is he just like doing
yeah.
his own like headcanon now?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, the way I interpret it, anytime Filoni, because Filoni's basically running. Last year, Kathleen Kennedy said, "Okay, you are the creative. You're the Kevin Feige of Star Wars now. The way we've been doing it isn't working. Having different people in control of different things. She's trying to get more synergy. Everything goes through him now. And anytime Filoni rubs up against something where he's not sure, when he's not confident that this is the right thing, he will go to George Lucas and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're thinking. Does this work with how you see the Force and the galaxy and all of that? So in the answers that he's getting back when he goes to Mr. Lucas in those moments, even Filoni himself is surprised at some of the answers that Lucas is giving him. That's how I interpret that statement myself, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying there. That's interesting.
So yeah.
So it'd be cool to see, hopefully someday Filoni will, after George's demise, that he'll share, or maybe George will share in his last will and testament. And here's my last say on Star Wars. does he update his will every 6 months?
I don't even think we need to. I think Filoni's doing that right now. And when you get Filoni Star Wars, you're getting these the Lucas
he's
Star
not going to get everything. He's not going to get everything, right? Because you said Lucas is totally diverged in some ways, right? Or Filoni said that, right? So
I'll okay, for next week we can't play audio clips, but I will transcribe the interview for that specific thing so I can give you his exact statement.
Oh, I think we can play audio clips. We can play audio clips.
Oh, okay. I'll make
we'll
sure
try
that
it. We'll try it. We'll see. We'll see what complaints we get, but I think you're allowed to do it.
Yeah, as long as there's no copyrighted music or anything, there's no reason we couldn't show that.
It's like a soundbite. We're a news show where we should be allowed to play the news quotes from the leaders. So yes, I mean,
so we'll table that for this week. We'll get
if you can get some sound bites. Yeah, you can send me the audio clips and
all right,
try that.
And that's it for Star Wars. I have a little bit of Marvel news as we come closer to the release of the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. There was another trailer that was shown this last week. There wasn't a whole lot of new footage in it, so not a whole lot to really talk about there, except there were 2 new character reveals of 2 characters that are coming back to the franchise that were not revealed to us at this point. One of the characters that was spotted in the trailer, and this is significant because it's the version of this character, is the Juggernaut. And the Juggernaut that we're getting in Deadpool and Wolverine is not the Juggernaut from Deadpool 2. It is the Vinnie Jones Juggernaut that we got from Juggernaut 3, the infamous, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch! We're getting that Juggernaut in Deadpool and Wolverine. And the other character reveal was Lady Deadpool. I am not familiar. I have never read any comic book with Lady Deadpool, so I can't even tell you who she is.
I can't recall her either.
It's a female version of Deadpool with long blonde hair. So she looked good. I'll give her that.
Yeah.
Speculation is that she will be played by Ryan Reynolds' wife, Blake Lively, who, if you don't know, Blake Lively, her best friend, is also Taylor Swift, which leads to the endless rumors that Taylor Swift will be appearing as Dazzler in this movie as well.
Aha.
Um,
Oh, that's actually not a bad casting choice. I
uh,
think I saw
apparent.
her in a movie. I saw her in that movie with Christian Bale was in it.
What
Takes
movie
who
was
was the
that?
other star? It was like took place in the 30s.
Oh, Amsterdam.
Yeah, she was in Amsterdam. Yeah, she was all right.
Did you see that movie?
I did.
Huh.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It
wanted
was
to watch
okay.
that movie. I thought it looked pretty good.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was all right. Yeah.
Well, the speculation are going on for a while because apparently there was a deleted scene from X-Men Dark Phoenix. If you remember, they go to the mall or something and they're in a record store and someone holds up a Dazzler record in the movie and they got Taylor Swift to dress up in costume and pose just for a photo for this
Yeah,
photo album.
yeah.
So
That'd
there's
be
that
cool.
there. But the other thing is because Taylor Swift is best friends with Ryan Reynolds' wife, and I know on that Welcome to Wrexham, the show about the soccer team in England that Ryan Reynolds owns with the guy from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Taylor Swift was also at one of those soccer games in the box with him and Hugh Jackman and the director of the movie and all of that. So that's another big source of where these rumors are coming from. Plus, on the recently released Taylor Swift album that came out last month, the very last line of dialogue on the album is that I am here to dazzle you. And apparently
There you
Taylor
go.
Swift is known to be putting in clues and hints about like her ex-boyfriends and stuff like she's famous for that in her songs. So everyone say, well, that's it. She's telling everyone that she's going to be Dazzler. So
Well, there
there's
you
that.
go. Hopefully, all the Swifties listening into this podcast can, we're all for it. I definitely am entertained by Taylor Swift and her music, all stuff. Although I will still take the balanced approach that she has been getting some. There's always some negativity. I guess the latest one is she seems to be doing some apparently weirdness of trying to make sure others can't get to the top spot of the charts, and so she's getting
Ha!
some flack for that, some manipulation, they say, of the markets and whatnot. I
I did.
I
I
only
did
see
not.
the headlines. I do not have the time to understand the the machinations
Well,
of the Billboard and international charts. But anyway, so
well, I
it's
saw a Taylor Swift headline, and I joked about it at the start of the podcast. As we're not going to get into it, but I will say the headline that I saw yesterday is that apparently Donald Trump returned to Washington this week, and in the private meeting with the GOP leaders, he spent 10 minutes complaining about what he has to do to get Taylor Swift to endorse him, and he's mad that she won't. And it's like, this is what you're talking about? She's never going to endorse you, buddy. Like, get over it. Anyways, so yeah.
hold
Okay.
on here, Nuas. Nuas, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hold
Yes,
on.
I can.
Sorry, just give me 5 seconds here, Nuas.
Yep. 5 seconds, and while he's taking that 5 seconds, I'll let you know that I have one little bit of news to talk about before we leave. We talked about the Deadpool trailer. Next, we're going to be talking. I
Oh, hey,
have a little
Nuas,
bit of.
I'm back. I'm back.
You're
Sorry.
back.
Thanks for covering. So yeah, I think the we'll use that as my Johnny D's tea. Is that the fact that there was some flack against good old Taylor Swift and her machinations. That's all I know is that there's some people complaining about that. The general just outrage from the other part of the Star Wars community that's always there. They're extra outraged this time. That's my tea spot. But I think actually I do have to wrap up. So,
Okay.
but if there's any last,
Well,
it's probably time for you if you have any last comments, topics you needed to get through before we sign
no,
off.
well, I teased a little. I'll just let you know very quickly, everyone, because I did mention we were going to talk about it. Is just that Captain America has 22 days of reshoots going on right now. The reshoots are because they've added a new cast member. It's Giancarlo Esposito, also known as Gus Fring from Breaking Bad, or Moff Gideon from The Mandalorian. So he has taken on a major role in the Marvel Universe that will see his debut in the new Captain America movie, and then he will be getting his own or maybe not his own, but he will be in a Disney Plus show afterwards. That was taken from an interview. There's more on that, but I don't need to talk about that if we got to wrap it up. The only other thing I will mention is it is Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final tonight. The Edmonton Oilers are down 0-3 in the series. I have two things to say about that. First thing I'll say is in 1982-83, the first time ever the Edmonton Oilers made it to the Stanley Cup Final, they also got swept by the New York Islanders, and in those 4 games, Wayne Gretzky himself, the greatest hockey player of all time, only managed 4 assists and 0 goals. So the fact that the Edmonton Oilers of 2024 are on the precipice of being swept themselves, and Connor McDavid only has 3 assists and no goals so far in the series, well, there's been a lot of parallels between Gretzky and McDavid throughout their careers up to this point, and it seems like those parallels could continue. But the other thing I was going to say is the Edmonton Oilers have lost 3 games in a row 4 times this season, and every time they have come back with a 4-game win streak. So we will see tonight what's going to happen there, and the next time you tune into Red 5 Standing By, we'll either have another hockey game to watch or they'll be golfing. We'll let you know. That's all I have to say for this week.
All right, so a glimmer of hope from Master Nuos. All right.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes. So yes, thanks for listening, and thanks Nuos for walking through this latest episode of the Acolyte. And yeah, we'll see everybody next week. I'm just going to get our outro music going here, just because yeah, that's how we do things here. We like to end with a bang. So thanks for oh, wrong button here. To this episode of Red 5 Standing By. May the force be with you.